Trolling is probably one of the most popular types of boat fishing among non-commercial as well as commercial charter fishermen. Butch Farm of Hobbietat talks about some things to consider when selecting and rigging lures.
So if you're trolling and you're trying to catch usually the smaller fish like mai-mais, onos, small shibis, we'll tend to go to smaller lures. So anywhere from 5 3/8 or 6.5 inch lures. These do very well and they catch a lot of fish. But just because they were made to catch a smaller fish doesn't mean you can't catch a 500-pound marlin on something like this because it's been done already. In general, you'll tend to run smaller lures for the smaller fish. So these little fish head lures like this that Kahea makes, we've caught ono, marlin, everything on it. You can get it in a 5 3/8 or 6.5, 7 inch, and on up to a 12 inch one. But this is just to give you a different idea on more of a straight side to side runner, because this will tend to swim like this, as compared if you get something like this, we call it an angle cut. That'll also give a little bit more side to side movement, but it'll run differently. Even to something called a malolo that has actually flat sides and an angle cut. And if you notice, the angle is reversed from this, which will cause it to run deeper and dive down a little bit more. We'll tend to run these to catch more of the smaller fish. You got more chance to catch a much greater variety of things. Then when you start to try to target species or specific fish, you start to go into little bigger lures and heavier lures. Like this is called a M90, and it has what we call the flower skirts on it, which is quite popular. We've been using this for years upon years. But this shape for a chrome jet head, it runs extremely well, especially like on our particular boat down the center, which is inside of our 2 riggers. It does extremely well. Doesn't do so well on a long rigger for us because it loses all its action and the height. So then it was developed to make this, which is very light in relationship. So this is a M90AL. We had it manufactured strictly out of aluminum by a custom aluminum maker guy. And by doing this, it runs extremely well on our outrigger. In fact, it cost our last ahi and our last 600+ pound marlin. Takes you to things like angle cut. So this is a Reno lure. It's a slant cut, reverse taper, slight reverse taper. So we run these in all different kind of configurations. And we have straight runners and jets and other things like that. A lot of it has to do with positioning on the boat and knowing where to put it and seeing how it runs to make sure that it works well. Okay, as far as rigging the lures, most of the time we'll put 300+ pound leaders on 9 inch lures or bigger. We'll set it up with a trailer hook. If they're first starting, I'll tend to tell the person not to run a trailer hook, because you got to remember this hook is running free. So it might be flopping all over the place as compared to a single hook like this. And it's better the hook is in the fish rather than in your hand or leg. So you're better off with a single hook until you get more used to trailer hooks. As far as choosing the size hook, we just usually want something that's strong. I don't have any here, but we've bent a lot of these hooks open. Like this is a J hook. I don't know if you can see it, and it has a kink in it. It's not really straight, and it's very, very strong. So the hook actually is twisted. It gives us a better gap, and we found lately that this has been hooking fish a lot better than just a plain straight hook. We usually run cable from here to on the trailer. Some people will run mono, some people will use solid wire. If this is done properly and maintained, then usually have no problem. If you notice, I have a Flemish eye. This is called a Flemish eye on the back hook. So that goes into the lure. so you can't really see it. And the reason we put a single loop on the top is because it has less splash. Kind of sometimes it stops things like onos and stuff from coming up and biting the swivel and whatnot. All of the pressure on this particular loop is on this crimp, so it has to be done extremely carefully, and it should be perfect anyway when you do it. You make a Flemish eye like this, the sleeve basically just holds it tight, and that becomes actually a form of a knot that'll just tighten down. If you can bury it, why not put a forgiving knot or loop on the back half? What it does do, it does increase the length of the line by about 1/4 of an inch. So depending how critical you are of your heights and how it sits will determine that also. As far as the hook sticking out, we normally tend to rig like this. This is still IGFA legal, just so long this eye of the hook is within the skirt, as compared to if it were like that, it would be illegal. The reason for having so many different colors and shapes and designs, it depends on how rough the water is, where you're fishing, the type of bait in the area, and that's why for such this big assortment. And it's almost a disease, lures, to get into it. You know, you're always looking for that one magic lure that's going to do it. Anywhere from the smallest 4 1/4, which I don't have here, up to even bigger than things like this. When we find that one, we'll put it in a certain drawer and we'll save it for a tournament. Very seldom will you get a lure that won't catch. You just have to put it in the right place and get it set up properly. Usually you can make a lure bite sooner or later, but it takes a lot of time and effort to fine-tune it to your system.